The story kicks off as Hikaru spots a powerful beam of light shooting out from a building. Alarms blare inside, and the guards are freaking out after realizing something seriously important has been stolen. The thief is named Aki, and she makes an acrobatic escape, but the guards catch up to her on the roof. But Aki's no ordinary thief. She's a Mecha Yude host. So she whips out her weapon and starts taking them down, but they're packing anti-Mecha Yude gear. Despite her best efforts, she's captured and another host steps in, ready to reclaim the stolen cube. Aki's Mecha Yude isn't staying quiet. It speaks up, insulted by how poorly its kind is treated. The blue-haired guy couldn't care less, seeing Mecha Yude as nothing more than tools for humans. He retrieves the cube and taunts Aki, but she's not done yet. With some tricks up her sleeve, she breaks free and an epic battle ensues. The guy demands she be captured, but Aki is too quick and agile. In the chaos, she knocks the cube loose, breaking its container. Then a massive surge of power erupts from it, the same light Hikaru saw earlier. As the energy flares, Hikaru feels something strange, like a voice calling out for help. The next day, Hikaru heads to school, still shaken by what he saw. On the train, he suddenly has a panic attack and tries to rush back home, but his friends show up, unknowingly stopping him. Nearby, Eki is getting scolded for all the chaos she caused. She's told the cube is still somewhere nearby, and she promises not to mess up again. Later, we see Hikaru telling his friends about the strange voice he heard and the bright light from the night before. He explains that after getting a closer look, the building exploded. He even recorded it on his phone, but for some reason, the video shows nothing. Hikaru also mentions seeing something bright fall nearby, but that's not in the footage either. His friends don't believe a word of it, dismissing his story as some weird dream. They mock him for believing in ghosts. But then, out of nowhere, Hikaru hears the voice again, and he's left in shock. Hikaru charges toward the mysterious voice, only to be stopped by some badass cop who warns him he's nearing a restricted area. The cop tells him to go home, but then just leaves him there like it's no big deal. Ignoring the warning, Hikaru hears the voice again, crying out for help. Something inside him snaps, and he dashes into the restricted zone, desperately searching for the source. His frantic search leads him to a glowing cube, the voice coming from within it, asking for help again. Hikaru is now shocked but curious, so he ends up touching the cube anyway. The cube suddenly shoots straight up into the sky, and now Hikaru is in a state of extreme panic when he sees it come back down. But before it touches him, it unleashes a massive burst of power. The light is blinding, so intense that even Aki, wherever she is, notices it. Hikaru, however, has bigger problems. A giant arm suddenly sprouts out of his back, and the arm is celebrating its freedom. Even weirder, Hikaru can't feel the arm at all. Then, while he's still trying to figure out where the voice is coming from, the arm casually reveals itself. It thanks Hikaru for saving it and asks for his name, but Hikaru, understandably losing his mind, has no idea what's going on, but the arm tries to be polite and introduces itself first, only to realize it's forgotten its own name. Hikaru, in full panic mode, tries to shake it off, but the arm is stuck to his hoodie like some clingy pet. Then, before Hikaru can even process this madness, a drone shows up and declares that its target has been found. Hikaru, thinking it's just some delivery drone, ignores it in his attempt to ditch the arm. But surprisingly, this is not an Amazon package, it's a weapon of mass destruction. And now Hikaru has to run for his life. As he runs, Hikaru yells at the arm to leave him the hell alone and go hang out with its drone buddy. But the arm insists that Hikaru is his only friend now. In the chaos, Hikaru trips, and the arm accidentally yanks his pants off. Pantsless and panicking, Hikaru still manages to use the arm to fend off the drone and stop it from slicing him in half. The arm points out with perfect timing that now is really not the time for laughing. Then, to make matters worse, several more Terminator-style drones appear. So the arm, trying to keep Hikaru calm, tells him not to worry because they just need to work together to escape. Elsewhere, a group gets word that the trigger arm has been located. One guy's pumped to have it back, but the rest of them are losing their minds, furious that it's made contact with some random human. They're not sure of who the kid is, but they figure he's just some civilian. The president of the group leaves the whole mess to the angry white rooster of a guy, who immediately orders a perimeter around the area, and his top priority is to capture the trigger arm, and he doesn't give a damn what happens to the kid. Meanwhile, Hikaru manages to hide for a moment, and the arm compliments him on being a pretty fast runner. Hikaru, still freaked out, demands to know what the arm even is, but it has no clue, not even its own name. The only thing it's sure of is that Hikaru is a stand-up guy. The arm goes on to explain that without something called arbitrium, it can't move freely. So Hikaru is confused, wondering what this arbitrium thing is, but the arm's all over the place and just asks for Hikaru's name. Hikaru is still not interested in chit-chat, walks off, pointing out that the arm seems to work just fine for escaping on its own. The arm concernedly warns that they might still be in danger, worried about Hikaru's safety. But Hikaru's not having it. He blames the arm for all the trouble and says he'd be safer if he got far away from it. The further Hikaru gets, the more the arm starts to weaken, practically begging him not to leave it behind. Hikaru hesitates and rushes back to help, but the arm recovers just as quickly, so Hikaru tries to leave again. This back and forth goes on a few times, and it becomes painfully obvious that Hikaru has to stick close or the arm will lose its energy completely. Realizing he's got no other choice, Hikaru reluctantly throws his hoodie back on with the arm still attached. Just then, the drones show up again, but this time, Hikaru snaps and demands that the arm do something useful. The arm doesn't hesitate, it grabs Hikaru and drags him off. Meanwhile, the blue-haired guy up top figures the drones are enough to handle this civilian, as he has to focus on Aki, who's lurking nearby. Aki is down below, but surprisingly she's so terrible with directions, so the voice in her ear is trying to guide her, telling her to go the other way, but instead of taking the long way around. Aki's arms contemplate smashing through the building, but she decides to squeeze through an opening instead. Meanwhile, Hikaru is still running for his life, but Aki eventually tracks him down, and she unleashes her arms to take the drones down with ease. Aki calls Hikaru's arm Alma and threatens it, warning that if it moves, she'll end it right there. Aki's arms remind her she's supposed to read some script to put her targets at ease, but they're rudely interrupted by the blue-haired guy, who's itching for revenge after last night's events. He ends up bickering with Aki's arms of all things. Alma then points out a way for Hikaru to escape, and since Aki can't chase them with her arms out, Hikaru takes the chance. The drones of course keep coming after him, and Aki's anger skyrockets. Hikaru is already regretting the hell out of ever stepping foot in this restricted area, and the terror is written all over his face. Alma, seeing the mess he's dragged Hikaru into, tells him to just leave him behind. Everyone's gunning for them, and Alma doesn't want Hikaru caught up in it any longer. Hikaru hesitates because if he leaves, Alma will lose all his strength, and this moment shows just how kind-hearted Hikaru really is. Alma's resolve strengthens, and he reminds that he never wants to see good people get hurt, so he tells Hikaru to forget everything and run as fast as he can. Just then, Aki obliterates the blue-haired guy, and she's had it with Alma's constant running. Alma cornered surrenders and agrees to do whatever Aki says as long as she lets Hikaru go. But Hikaru's no longer the same scared kid, so he's done with being a coward, and also would leave a sour taste in his mouth if he ran away now. Aki, clearly fed up, decides she'll have to destroy both of them, but Alma does something unexpected. He tells Hikaru to step forward, but Hikaru hesitates confused, so Alma insists this is the only way out. Hikaru takes a deep breath, trusts the arm he just met, and charges forward. And in that moment, Alma undergoes a wild transformation, giving Hikaru the power to land a punch on Aki so hard that all she can do is reach out helplessly as they make their escape. They crawl out of a sewer not long after, and Hikaru finally introduces himself properly this time. Back at the building, some kid collapses in fury, demanding to know who stole his Mecha Yude. He's seething, declaring that the trigger arm is his. Meanwhile, Aki's boss is disappointed to hear she let the arm slip away, but he gets it because no one could have predicted a civilian would manage to control Alma. Time's ticking though, and their enemies will be hot on their trail, so he orders Aki back out to retrieve the arm. Later on, Hikaru heads to school, trying to act normal while hiding the fact that he's got a giant talking arm attached to him. He then thinks he's in the clear, until he walks into class and his heart sinks when he spots Aki, now the newest student in school. Ignoring everyone, the furious Aki drags her seat right next to Hikaru's seat and introduces herself with a cold, angry glare, and that shit leaves our poor boy completely speechless. Then, as Hikaru tries to shrug off Aki's intense death glare, he has no idea that someone else is also keeping an eye on him. Two agents, Warner and Toos, are watching him from a nearby building. They work for the Kagami Group and have been assigned to recover the trigger arm by any means necessary, including murder, although Toos isn't thrilled about the idea of killing a kid. Later after class, Hikaru sneaks into the bathroom, hoping to escape Aki. He never imagined she'd actually follow him to school, but today it doesn't seem like she's looking for a fight. Hikaru figures she's trying to avoid making a scene on school grounds. Regardless, Alma thinks this is their chance to talk things out. Yesterday's chaos left them no choice but to fight Aki, but thinking back, she did seem somewhat friendly at first, though Hikaru remembers it a bit differently, and his missing favorite pants a proof of that shit day. Still, there aren't many people he can talk to about Alma. His options are limited: go with Aki or head to the police. Hikaru asks Alma what he thinks, but Alma is too busy having fun messing with the toilet paper to really care. However, Aki, who had been eavesdropping from the next stall, cuts in. She tells Hikaru that going to the police is a terrible idea. They'd hand him straight over to Kagami. She then climbs over the stall and tells Hikaru she's here to be his bodyguard. But Hikaru, flustered by how close she is in the boys' restroom, panics and bolts out the door, with Aki chasing after him. Later, after losing Aki, Hikaru is having lunch with his friends. But given how Aki has been relentlessly chasing him lately, his friends are starting to think he might be in a relationship with her or something. Hikaru denies it, but his weak protests aren't exactly convincing, especially when Aki shows up on the roof, looking for him yet again. Hikaru's friends call Aki over, pointing out that he's right there, but in that very moment, Hikaru seems to have disappeared. Somehow he managed to slip away and hide in the blink of an eye. Alma, confused by Hikaru's behavior, wonders why he's dodging Aki when they'd already agreed to try talking to her. But just then, one of Hikaru's classmates shows up on the roof, clearly having searched for Aki all over. She introduces herself as Meru, all smiles, and says it's nice to finally meet Aki. But Aki's reaction is not exactly warm and fuzzy. Meru, being as cheerful as ever, mistakes Aki's cold expression for nerves. After all, she's the new kid. So by trying to make things less awkward, she offers Aki a tray of cookies as a welcome gift. Hikaru braces himself, half expecting Aki to blow up, but to his shock, Aki seems completely mesmerized by the cookies, and without a second thought, she grabs a fistful and shoves them into her mouth. Meru, a little taken aback by how fast Aki inhaled the cookies, is happy her gift was appreciated. She then asks if they can be friends, and Aki, still chewing, casually says she doesn't mind. Watching this unfold, Hikaru is stunned because Aki seems way more normal than he had initially though, but that doesn't mean he's about to strike up a conversation with her. So he slips on his noise-canceling headphones and decides to nap his way through the rest of the day, hoping to avoid her. Meanwhile, as Aki continues devouring the cookies, Meru starts asking about her relationship with Hikaru. That's when Aki suddenly remembers she was supposed to be looking for him this whole time. Wanting to be helpful, Meru comes up with a plan to get Aki alone with Hikaru. Later that day, while Hikaru is trying to make a quiet exit from school, Meru appears out of nowhere and hands him a handwritten letter from Aki. Hikaru already knows where this is headed, and as he predicted, Aki wants to meet him. Meru, fully convinced she's playing matchmaker, drags Hikaru to an abandoned part of the school, refusing to let him leave because she's certain Aki is about to confess her love. Frustrated and out of options, Hikaru steps into the classroom where Aki is waiting and immediately starts yelling at her for getting Meru involved in this whole mess. Aki, completely unbothered, denies everything, explaining that this was all Meru's idea. Still, Hikaru points out that she's been following him around all day and demands to know what her deal is. Finally, Aki cuts to the chase, revealing that she's part of an organization called ARMS, and her mission is to watch over Alma as his bodyguard. Alma thinks this is fantastic news. After all, Aki protecting them sounds like a win. But Aki quickly clarifies, saying her job is to protect Alma, not Hikaru. She isn't too concerned with what happens to Hikaru, but since Alma is linked to him, there's not much she can do to separate them. As part of her mission, she's supposed to bring both of them back to headquarters. She assures Hikaru that nothing will happen to him as long as he cooperates, and while Alma sees this as great news, Hikaru remains skeptical, because he's still not sure if Aki can be trusted. Alma understands Hikaru's hesitation, but insists that Aki knows something important about him, something they need to find out. Alma is still curious about who he is, and Hikaru feels bad for him, so Hikaru reluctantly agrees to go with Aki, even though he doesn't fully trust her. But before committing though, Hikaru demands to know why Alma loses power whenever he moves too far away from him. After witnessing this firsthand, Aki's mind short-circuits for a moment. In her experience, a mecha you'd fusing to something as simple as a jacket shouldn't be possible, and there's no intel on anything like this. She then steps closer to Hikaru, telling him she needs to take him in for testing, but her sudden aggression freaks him out. So Hikaru panickedly asks Alma if there's any way they can get out of this. Alma tries to use the same power they'd unleashed on Aki the day before. There's a massive flash of light, but nothing happens because Alma's still too weak, so that leaves Hikaru with only one option. He grabs Alma and bolts. Running as fast as he can, Hikaru heads for the front door. But just as he's about to escape, Meru steps in his way, blocking the exit, and she tells him he should finish talking to Aki before she lets him leave. Meanwhile, outside the building, Tus and Wana are keeping a close watch on the entrance. But since there's a schoolgirl standing outside, they can't make a move without blowing their cover. Inside, Hikaru frantically searches for another way out, but all the other exits have been boarded up, so with no options left, it looks like his only choice is to head up. Meanwhile, Aki is desperately trying to track him down. Dex, her right arm, chimes in, saying she should head down the right hall, while Sinus, her left arm, argues she should go left. But surprisingly, Aki ignores both of them and goes rogue, literally. She smashes through the floor, crashing directly on top of Hikaru. Now there's no escape for Hikaru, but Aki can't wrap her head around why Hikaru's running when he literally spared her life just yesterday. Hikaru then tries to explain by saying that he could never kill anyone, but Aki's not hearing it anymore. She's convinced he's up to something shady, using Alma as part of his scheme. Alma tries to defend him, claiming Hikaru's not the bad guy here. But Aki's too far gone in her suspicions, so Alma tries to use his powers to protect Hikaru, but when Alma's powers fail to activate again, Aki takes it as undeniable proof. Hikaru isn't bonded with Alma, so her mind's made up that Hikaru's gotta go, and she's ready to end it all to protect Alma. But of course, this is when Meru bursts in, drawn by all the noise. And wouldn't you know it, she catches a glimpse of the scene and immediately jumps to the wrong conclusion. Thinking she's interrupting a private moment, so she awkwardly turns around and leaves without a word. And as soon as she's gone, Aki moves in to finish the job. But Hikaru's already vanished, forcing her to start the hunt all over again. Once Aki's out of sight, Hikaru quietly gets to his feet and tries to slip out through the front door. But he's stopped by Wanner, who's now wearing one of those Kagami Group uniforms, instantly putting Hikaru on high alert. Wanner casually says he needs Hikaru's help, but seriously, after the Kagami Group nearly killed him with drones, Hikaru's in no mood to offer any favors. Wanner then offers a half-hearted apology, claiming the drones were a mistake, but he's really only sorry they didn't finish the job. And without warning, he blasts Hikaru with the sonic cannon. It doesn't physically harm him, but Hikaru drops to his knees, overwhelmed by dizziness. Wanner then kicks the door open to give Tus a clear shot, but like an idiot, he's blocking her view. But by the time he steps aside, Alma has already dragged Hikaru out of range. Even though Hikaru is still reeling, the danger's far from over, so he scrambles back inside, desperate to escape the nightmare. Tus is pissed at Wanner for screwing up her shot, so she decides to stop wasting time and starts blasting through the walls, hoping to nail Hikaru. Hikaru is freaking out, sure that she's going to kill him, but Alma has something else on his mind. Even though Wanner's using a mecha Yude, Alma can't sense any consciousness from it, which is seriously weird. Right then, Wanner hits Hikaru with another sonic wave, and Hikaru crashes at the end of the hallway, but just as Tus takes her shot, Aki swoops in, saving his life at the last second. Not backing down, Wanner fires off another sonic wave, so Aki tries to block it, but just like Hikaru, she gets dizzy and drops to the ground. Wanner is loving every minute of this because he lives for making people suffer. But Aki not going down that easy, so she pushes herself back up, determined to protect Alma, and she begs Hikaru to run while he still can. Hikaru hesitates, not wanting to leave Aki to fight alone, but she begs him to go because they can't let the Kagami Group get their hands on Alma. Hikaru finally listens, dashing away while Aki keeps Wanner busy. But of course, Wanner's not done. He pulls out a new weapon, and Aki has no idea how to handle it. Meanwhile, as Hikaru races up the stairs, he grows increasingly frustrated with everyone coming after him. Then Alma stops him and says they shouldn't leave Aki behind after all. But Hikaru reminds him that Aki told him to run to protect Alma, but Alma's not feeling it. He doesn't want to abandon her, so he leaps off Hikaru's back and punches a hole through the wall for Hikaru to escape. But when Alma tries to go back to help Aki himself, he quickly loses power because he can't move too far from Hikaru. Realizing Alma can't do anything without him, Hikaru agrees to return and help, but they need a solid plan before facing Wanner and his deadly sonic cannon. Meanwhile, Wanner manages to defeat Aki by using shackles that suppress the consciousness of Mecha Yude, rendering her helpless. He then drags her to the rooftop where Tus is supposed to snipe her. But to Wanner's surprise, Tus shows up in person, frustrated with how long he's taking to finish the job. She then takes one look at Aki and mocks her for being so pathetic, barely able to contain her disdain. Sure, Tus would love to kill her, but she has orders to bring Aki back alive. She then tells Wanner to get back inside and find Hikaru, but that won't take long because Hikaru's already coming up the staircase right toward them. Then as soon as Hikaru spots Wanner, he throws a punch, but let's be real, he's no fighter and Wanner easily dodges it. Hikaru may not have fists of fury, but at least he knows Wanner's attacks won't work on him. Wanner decides to blast him anyway, but Hikaru's got noise-canceling earpieces in, making him immune to the sonic wave. His goal was just to buy enough time for Aki to get back in the game, but when he glances at her, he realizes she's been captured, and that throws a wrench in his plan, so by thinking fast, Hikaru comes up with a new one. He then throws Alma at Aki, hoping to get those shackles off her Mecha Yude. But of course, Alma starts losing power the second he's too far from Hikaru. So now Hikaru has to sprint closer, and somehow Tus, who's supposed to be a sniper, completely misses her shot. Alma and Hikaru manage to free Aki, and the moment she's back on her feet, she grabs Tus, using her as a human shield to charge straight at Wanner. Wanner hesitates because he doesn't want to blast Tus, but she orders him to fire for the sake of the mission. He follows through, but all he manages to do is knock Tus out cold, so Aki wastes no time and delivers a knockout blow to Wanner as well. The building is on the verge of collapse after all the damage their fight caused, and just before it crumbles, Tus regains consciousness and flies away, leaving Wanner to get buried in the rubble along with the others. Then we see that Aki and Hikaru make it out in one piece, but before they can catch their breath, Aki's boss from ARMS shows up, and he is not happy with the mess she made to complete the mission. They then haul Hikaru back to their headquarters, and when Hikaru finally wakes up, he's introduced to the leader of the ARMS group, Algiz, and his Mecha Yude Fist. Aegis explains that they're in a war against the Kagami group, whose goal is to enslave all Mecha Yude and control them. Alma doesn't remember much about them, but Fist reveals he's actually Alma's brother, and they need his help to win this war. Alma immediately agrees to help and convinces Hikaru to join as well, but Aki and Aegis cut in, telling Hikaru that they only need Alma for this fight, so technically he doesn't have to stick around at all. While he was asleep, they ran tests on him to measure the levels of Arbitrium in his body. Arbitrium is the energy produced by the human mind, and it's what fuels all Mecha Yude. But when Hikaru's levels were plotted on a graph, well, this is what his levels look like. And this is what a normal Mecha Yude user's levels look like. In case it wasn't already clear, Hikaru is a total failure when it comes to wielding Mecha Yude, and there's no sugarcoating it. Aegis then admits that Hikaru might have been the one to awaken Alma, but he's also the reason Alma is now fused to a jacket, and on top of that, he can't even use Alma's power. Despite this disaster, they have no choice but to leave Alma in Hikaru's care for now. However, Aegis makes it painfully clear Hikaru is not allowed to act on his own under any circumstances because he simply cannot handle himself. Alma then tries to defend Hikaru, pointing out that the only reason Kagami didn't capture him is thanks to Hikaru. But Quen cuts in, saying that even if that's true, the fact remains. Hikaru doesn't have the power to wield Alma properly, making him a liability. Just as things get tense, Aki interrupts, saying she believes Hikaru might have the potential to draw out Alma's power after all. He did harness it the first time they met, so with some training, she's sure he can improve. And what has this training been so far? Alma doing push-ups on the school roof? Sure, Hikaru's grateful Aki offered to train him, but he's seriously questioning how effective this is when Alma is doing all the work and he's just sitting there. But Aki tells him that training Arbitrium is all about spirit, so he just needs to psych himself up to make himself stronger. That's all well and good, but it still doesn't explain how exercise is supposed to boost his Arbitrium. Nonetheless, Hikaru decides to just roll with it for now. A few moments later, Eki gets a call from ARMS, telling her she has to return to headquarters immediately, so she cuts Hikaru and Alma's so-called training short and drags them back with her. Apparently, there's been a string of incidents where Mecha Yude have been ripped away from their wielders, and surprisingly, this guy is the third victim this week. Aegis is convinced this has Kagami's dirty fingerprints all over it, likely the work of a new agent. So his top priority now is to recover the stolen Mecha Yude as fast as humanly possible before things go from bad to worse. Alma, clueless as ever, asks what too late even means, so Dex breaks it down for him. If someone's Mecha Yude gets forcibly ripped from their body, they're dead in a few days, no question. They're not entirely sure why, but the best guess is that Arbitrium starts leaking out from the fusion point, draining the poor soul's strength until they just wither away. A lot about Arbitrium is still a mystery, but one thing's clear. It messes with the human body in ways they barely understand. For example, anyone who fuses with a Mecha Yude gets a ridiculous boost in physical ability. Not that it helps Hikaru, since Alma didn't fully fuse with him, he's still just a regular guy, no superpowers for him. Aki spots some marks on the victim's arms and instantly knows the culprit used a worm-type mecha. Aegis is already reading her mind, so before she can say anything, he shuts it down. Her job is to protect Alma, period, with no side missions and no personal vendettas. The second Aegis is out the door, Aki naturally ignores everything he just said and announces she has something she needs to investigate for personal reasons. And since she's stuck babysitting Hikaru, he's tagging along whether he likes it or not. Meanwhile, over at the Kagami group, they're panicking because Jun Kagami's younger brother has stolen an experimental artificial Mecha Yude and vanished into thin air. No one knows what his plan is, but it's definitely not good. The 3rd Division offers to handle it, but considering they're the same clowns who let Alma escape last time, the White Ravens are given the job instead. Elsewhere, Hikaru is out with Eki late into the night, and by now he's figured out she's snooping around investigating that case, even though Aegis told her not to. Still, he wonders if it's really a good idea for them to be out here alone. Aki flat out ignores him, but just then, they hear car horns blaring nearby. On the other side of the containers, they spot the White Ravens, busy searching for Kagami's younger brother. Their leader Imada orders his men to keep scouring the area. But of course, that's when Aki and Hikaru show up. Hikaru, as usual, thinks it's a terrible idea to get involved with anyone from the Kagami group, but Aki unfazedly assures him everything will be fine as long as he sticks close and keeps Alma hidden. She steps up to Imada and casually asks if he knows anything about a worm-type Mecha Yude wielder. At first, they think she's just some random girl, but the second she mentions Mecha Yude, their move flips. Imada and his squad go hostile. There's no way they can let the general public find out about the mechas. They charge in to capture her, and Aki's left with no choice but to fight back. She calls out Sinus and Dex for backup. Imada's taken aback when he realizes she's a mecha wielder, but orders are orders. He tells the White Ravens to regroup and attack again. Meanwhile, Hikaru gets knocked aside in the chaos, and as he's struggling to get back on his feet, he spots a young boy with an inhaler hiding in a corner. Hikaru tells the kid it's dangerous to be here and asks if he's okay, but the boy doesn't respond and instead he bolts. Hikaru has no idea who this kid is, but something doesn't sit right with him, so he takes off after the boy, leaving Aki to handle the White Raven solo. Imada, noticing this, has his Mecha Joe transform into a bike, and he speeds off to chase the kid too. At the same time, a few White Raven members catch up to the kid and Hikaru, so Hikaru steps in front of the kid, ready to protect him. The White Raven guys look more than happy to beat the crap out of Hikaru if it means getting to the kid, but right before Hikaru gets smacked, Alma pops out and blocks the hit. Just then, they spot Imada and his Mecha Yude bikes zooming straight toward them. Hikaru turns around and tells the kid to run, but the kid's already vanished. Imada's original target may have slipped away, but now that he spotted Alma, he switches gears and goes after him instead. Alma quickly realizes they're in trouble, so he tries to drag Hikaru to safety. But let's be real, there's no way Alma can outrun a motorcycle. So Imada easily catches up and grabs Alma, smug as ever for capturing the trigger arm. Just when it looks like Imada's won, Aki comes out of nowhere, knocks him clean off his bike, and pins him down. She demands answers about a worm-type Mecha Yude wielder, and Imada and Joe, not wanting to get squashed by a shipping container, reluctantly agree to cooperate. But it turns out they genuinely don't know anything about a worm-type wielder, so Aki frustratedly drops the container and lets them go. She's not happy about the dead end, but she's even more pissed at Hikaru for running off like an idiot. Hikaru tries to explain he saw a kid being chased and just wanted to help, but Aki's having none of it. She tears into him, furious that his reckless behavior almost got Alma captured. As much as she wants to believe in him, he's still powerless, and she tells him point blank that he can't do anything on his own. Meanwhile, the kid from earlier is watching everything unfold from the rooftops, clearly interested in Alma too. He's just waiting for the right moment to make his move. Back on the ground, Hikaru is just as furious with Aki. After all, she's the one who dragged him into this mess in the first place, without bothering to explain a damn thing. So why should he trust her or blindly follow her orders? And he's had enough? And if anyone's to blame for this disaster, it's her. So he tells her he's done, and he's just going to go home. Stinus and Dex then ask Aki if it's really okay to let Hikaru just walk off on his own, but she's too mad to care. She snaps that she doesn't give a damn what happens to him. As Hikaru storms away, Alma tries to talk sense into him, suggesting he go back and apologize to Aki. After all, she's the one protecting them. But Hikaru flat out refuses. Then we see that Jun is lurking nearby and thinks this is perfect. If Hikaru's beefing with his bodyguard, it'll be way easier to snatch Alma. But before he can make his move, Aki cuts him off, and despite being furious with Hikaru, she's still got a duty to keep them safe no matter what. Jun was hoping to avoid her, but since he's out of options, he brings out his mecha. Aki's blood boils when she realizes it's a worm type. So she thinks Jun is the very guy she's been hunting down, but after their first clash, Dex quickly realizes he's not the one they're after. Still, that moment of hesitation is all Jun needs to surround Aki, and things are about to go south fast. Meanwhile, Hikaru is stewing over his argument with Aki when his phone rings. Alma urges him to apologize while he's got the chance, but when Hikaru checks the screen, he sees a picture of Aki knocked out cold. Jun's voice follows, telling Hikaru that he's stripped Aki of her Mecha Yude, and without them, she'll be dead in a few hours. So if Hikaru wants to save her, he's got to meet Jun at a specific location. So the first thing the panicking Hikaru does is call Algis to report what happened. Algis is obviously worried about Aki, but he warns Hikaru not to go after Jun because that's exactly what Jun wants. He says he'll send some agents to track them down, but in the meantime he orders Hikaru and Alma to stay put and not do anything reckless. Hikaru is beyond fed up with being told he's too weak to handle anything, and he's starting to believe it might be true. Alma, however, assures him he's capable of amazing things when he sets his mind to it, but Hikaru isn't buying it, and he argues that every brave act he's done so far has only been because of Alma's influence, so without Alma he'd still be a coward. He then admits for the first time that he's truly powerless on his own, but right now he's not alone. So he asks Alma to lend him his strength for what he's about to do. Hikaru and Alma then head over to the abandoned warehouse Jun marked on the map, and as they walk in, Jun greets them with a smug smile. Alma, not wasting time, asks why Jun's doing all of this, so Jun, in typical fashion, explains that he's after the strongest Mecha Yude. Sure, Sinus and Dex are decent, but compared to what he wants, they're nothing but junk. What he really wants is the Trigger Arm, the legendary piece that's said to grant its wielder the strongest body, and Jun's determined to claim that power for himself. So without a second thought, Jun launches his attack, forcing Hikaru to dart around the room to avoid getting flattened. Then when he spots an opening, Hikaru closes in and tries to grab Sinus and Dex, but Jun's always one step ahead, blocking every move with ease. Jun laughs and mocks him, calling Hikaru nothing but a weakling. Hikaru doesn't argue because he knows he's weak, but that's not stopping him from doing what's right. With resolve burning in his eyes, he charges back in, managing to outmaneuver Jun just enough to break through his defenses. Frustrated beyond belief, Jun can't believe how hard Hikaru's making him work. To make things worse, his asthma starts acting up and he's had enough. Deciding to put an end to this, he traps Hikaru inside a massive energy cage, leaving him nowhere to run. Then with no hesitation, Jun electrocutes him until Hikaru crashes to the ground, completely drained. Seizing the moment, Jun grabs Hikaru and begins ripping Alma away, pulling them apart piece by piece. At last, Jun thinks it's over, he's finally got Alma, and now he can fix his broken body. But just as he begins to celebrate, Alma shockingly still moves and knocks him flat. Jun's completely baffled. Mecha Yude aren't supposed to move on their own. His confusion only deepens when Hikaru, who should be on the verge of death after having his mecha ripped out, starts moving too. Hikaru reaches out for Alma, and as soon as they touch, Alma's true power is unleashed, sending a clear message to Jun. He's in deep trouble. Jun tries forming a massive fist to knock them out, but it's pointless. Hikaru and Alma are on a different level now, and they crush his attack like it's nothing. Together, they launch a fist at Jun, and just when he thinks he's blocked it, Hikaru rushes in and finishes him off with one final brutal punch. Jun's completely down for the count at this point. Hikaru and Alma finally think they can breathe easy, but nope, they were dead wrong. The head of the White Ravens shows up, and both Hikaru and Alma brace themselves for another fight. But the man waves it off, saying he's not getting paid to brawl with them today. He's just here to take Jun and leave. He also grabs Sinus and Dex, intending to take them too, but Hikaru steps in, declaring he's not letting the guy walk off with them. The White Ravens leader looks like he's more than ready to throw down, but Jun, still licking his wounds, stops him, saying he wants to be the one to defeat Hikaru someday. He forbids the man from harming Hikaru for now. The man, with a shrug, tosses the Mecha Yude back to Hikaru, but not without a parting warning. They'll meet again, and next time, Hikaru won't be so lucky. A little while later, Aki wakes up in a hospital with Sinus and Dex reattached to her. After learning that Hikaru was the one who saved her, she heads up to the rooftop, where Hikaru is awkwardly trying to sew Alma back onto his jacket. She sits down next to him, and there's an uncomfortable silence. Eventually, Hikaru breaks the ice and asks her what she was really searching for the night before. Aki admits she was hunting for the person who killed her family. The only clue she has is that the killer wields a worm-type Mecha Yude. Turns out, Jun wasn't the one. She acted impulsively because of her need for revenge, and she's grateful Hikaru saved her from herself. Wanting to repay him, she offers to sew Alma back together for him. Problem is, Aki's terrible at sewing, and Hikaru quickly tries to stop her before she makes things worse. Just as they're struggling over the needle and thread, Meru walks in with some sweets, and seeing the two of them so close, Meru is instantly struck by what looks like a romance scene, her eyes widening in shock. She squeals, declaring the rom-com love has hit a new level, then runs off screaming that she loves it. Hikaru fumbles to explain, but before he can get a word out, Aki, completely unfazed, dives into the sweets like a maniac, happily munching away. That's it for this video, guys. If you like this new series, leave a like for the next episode, and subscribe for more Anon content. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.